This week on Inside the Headset, we are featuring Wofford's offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, Tyler Carlton. Coach Carlton highlights the importance of leaving a positive impact on players, shares how he has turned past negatives into positives, and gives his testimony on how the AFCA 35 under 35 program has helped his career thus far. Now, let's get inside the headset with Coach Carlton.
Coach Carlton, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's up, Coach? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. So excited to have you on. Always good to connect and see you, and happy you're doing well.
Appreciate it. Good to be here, man. Fired up. It's awesome. You guys do a great job for coaching, so I'm really honored to be on this with you guys.
No doubt, Coach. Well, you found a way to separate yourself as one of the up-and-coming coaches, early in your career. Stops at Tulsa, Clemson, Western Carolina, and you've kind of been around, and the name resonates across the coaching world. How would you describe your coaching philosophy, and what are a few of your core values that has allowed for you to have that very quick success early on in your career?
I think for me, it's always just kind of been, when I was a young coach, I wanted to make sure, we all had coaches that kind of inspired us along the way. And for me, it's been just, I want to make sure that, I leave an impact on those guys. And so for me, it's impact, inspire, influence, and invest. And I try to make sure that those guys, when I go in that room, that they're getting that. And I want to make sure that when they, 10, 15 years from now, that they calling me and saying, "Hey, Coach," I just talked to one of my former players actually this morning. We were texting back and forth, and he said, "Hey, Coach, I just bought my first house." And I thought, that was awesome. I was fired up for him.
Yeah.
And it goes back to, so to put it kind of in a quick, it's to coach the 30-year-old in that guy when you're in that position room or in that building.
Yeah.
Because I want those guys to call me, and I want to have that lifelong relationship. So I try to coach that 30-year-old in them. But I want to make sure that they know I love them, care for them. But the biggest thing is, hey, I want those guys to have that lifelong relationship with me long after the ball's gone flat for us. So
I love that you said that, man, because obviously in the role that I am now, I was coaching all the way up to 2016, 2017, and I've been here at the AFCA, and I thought I'd be sitting at my desk on days where I'm a little slow and thinking about, oh man, that was crazy. We upset Arkansas in 2012, or the bowl game and this, that, and the other, man. And I get my biggest smiles when I get that text message from a former player that just says, "Hey, Coach, just checking in on you. How you doing, man? Hey, Coach, I'm getting married." Just, and that puts a smile on my face more than any game, any memorabilia that's, sitting on my dresser in the office. And I just love that you say that, because ultimately, man, the wins and losses, that's what it's about. That's what keeps your job, and that's what it's about in that instant gratification process. And you want to make sure the kids have a good experience like that. But you're doing a good job coaching if you are getting that text or that call to saying, "I bought my first house," or "I'm getting married," or "Hey, just checking in, Coach, what's going on?" And I can tell you right now, just being in that seat, man, that does make a huge difference, man.
I guess it was probably 2 months ago. We were sitting on the couch, my wife and I got another text from a former player of mine at Western Carolina, played receiver for me. He just said, "Hey, Coach, want to make sure you knew that I loved you." He goes, "I'm not in this position today to graduate." It was graduation day. And he said, "I want to make sure you know, Coach, that I would not be here right now without you and what you did for me and developing me as a man." All that. I don't say those things arrogantly. I say that because I got emotional when it happened. Yeah. And I remember telling my wife, I got goosebumps sitting there talking about it. But I told my wife, I said, that right there is why we do what we do. I said, it's, and that's a place that I got fired from. And I had coached that kid in a year and a half. But I said, that's that impact, that lifelong impact that you want. And I said, that's exactly why. I said, because there's no other profession that you get that, in my opinion, to be able to do that. Right. And I said, that makes everything worth it.
Absolutely. So, absolutely. Well, you kind of alluded to the tougher part. I mean, this is the great part. You get those phone calls, but the tougher part of the coaching profession is, the harsh reality that you get let go, and sometimes it's as a staff, sometimes it's individually, and things happen for a reason, and sometimes you have to have to chew it up and accept it. Before been on the job market is something that every coach has to go through more than once. In most careers, if you're doing the right thing, it should be more than once. You kind of go through that.
Right.
Walk us through. You were 4 years at Western Carolina. You guys had some moments of success there, and you were a co-offensive coordinator. And what was your mindset as you were let go and you had to begin that journey of looking for that next gig? You were part of the 35 under 35 class. You were well connected. Like I said, you were at Clemson. You were in magazines. People were talking about you. And boom, you're off the market right now. You're on the market now. You're looking for a gig. Just talk to us about that process.
Well, the first thing, I think it kind of goes, hopefully you've done a good job developing relationships along the way, like you said. And so when you get in those moments, now you've got some people that you can fall back on. And I always tell people, like, don't just, and people always look at me sometimes, I'll be writing letters and trying to, reach out to people. But because if you only reach out to them when you need something, right, it's going to be tough. And I don't like that either. Like, this guy just always wants something. I wanted to make sure that, hey, it may be a simple text that, hey, Mario, how you doing, man? I hope your family's doing well, or something like that, not just only when you need something. So that way, when you get in those moments, now you've got a group of people, and like in the coaching fraternity, that you can rely on and fall back on and say, hey, I'm out of work. The first thing I did was, for whatever reason, God closed that door at that time. There's some days I was like, man, I don't know why. Maybe it's happening right now, but that's just the good Lord's work. And so what I did was, man, I was grateful I had that opportunity, but man, I started calling everybody and said, hey, I got fired. Like, I was not embarrassed. I was not, I said, hey, look, I'm out of work. I got to find a job. And I wasn't going to sit around and wait for it to get released to the media and all that stuff. It was, I got on the phone, called my agent and said, hey, here's what's up. And then started calling all my people that I'm close with, I literally went through my phone and I said, hey, this is what's up. Got let go. I'm on the market. If you hear of anything, keep me in the loop. And, cause then obviously I think that was a Friday after Thanksgiving, and, it didn't get released till Monday, to the public. And then obviously then the phone was blowing up, but I knew then though, there was a lot of people that had reached out to me after it obviously had broke. And so I was like, well, at least I'm doing something right, because my phone for 3 or 4 days just didn't stop ringing, and getting text messages from people that were saying, hey, you're going to be fine. And when I was at Clemson, I spent a lot of time with obviously Woody McCorvey, and anybody that's been in this profession for a long time knows Coach McCorvey. And he was funny. He said, TC, welcome to the club. Now you're a ball coach. You've been fired. So he was, and Coach Sweeney said the same thing. I'd gone down there not too long after they were getting ready for the ACC championship game. So I just tried to get around my network again. Got in the car, drove to Clemson. I was only 2 hours, went and spent the day down there, and tried to just get around my people and my support system, so to speak. Yeah. And knew that, the good Lord had never put me on the street before, and he wasn't going to start now. It was just time to do something else. Right. And I was okay with that, because I looked back at those kids in that room. They were developing as men, becoming good husbands and dads, all those things. We didn't have as much success as we wanted. And that happened sometimes, but I'm still proud of that time there and how that went. So. Yeah.
Coach, I'm happy we're having this conversation, because, this podcast is about, helping other coaches grow through, everybody's individual journey. And I was just talking to somebody else not that long ago about how beautiful the podcast is, because I can get anybody on here. Doesn't matter who. Mm-hmm. And we everybody has this awesome story in this profession. How you got in, how you grow, the transitions that you made. And, oftentimes we don't spend a bunch of time talking about this part of the coaching world that happens every single year. And it brings me back to a story. I was Van Malone. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's over at Kansas State.
We work together at Tulsa.
Oh, okay. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So, Van, he's an awesome dude, man. And, he just got let go at SMU, and I owed him a phone call right after it hit the news, and I'm like stuttering over my word. Coach, I know that, I got fired, man. I got fired, man. Just it is what it is, man. And we just move on. That's part of the profession. I was like, I love that you said that, man. You made it a lot easier for me, and and I'd been there before too. So I know what it was like, and I just love that we can have this honest conversation because it is a big part of that. And, the most exciting part is, you kind of get in that transition phase. You're looking, you made the phone calls, and then ultimately you end up coaching at a private school over in Atlanta, in the Atlanta area, I believe. You land there. Tell me about making the decision to take that job. Tell me about what you were able to learn over the course of that year, and then we'll kind of fast forward and what's going on now.
So sitting there, obviously, I was fortunate. I was, under contract at Western, so I kind of probably didn't have as much stress as some guys. For an FCS football coach, I was still getting paid for a couple. I had some time left on my contract, and so I tried to I said, man, everybody I talked to, Andrew Thacker's a buddy of mine, DC at Georgia Tech, and he told me, he said, man, he goes, enjoy the time you get with the kids, because he'd been let go before, and he said, man, don't miss that time that you're going to get. He said, you're going to find a job. You're a good ball coach. He said, but don't miss that time. And so I'd really tried to focus on every day. Obviously, I'd spend time making calls, reaching out, and doing that stuff. But I tried to be a really good dad. My boys were 5 and 4 at the time. And so I told my wife, I said, man, how awesome is this? I get this time with these kids at this age. I'm home every day. I was fixing to run for, PTA president up there in North Carolina, because I was like, man, everybody else is going to work, and I'm just taking the boys to school for a couple of hours and coming back, picking them up. We got, water slides going, man. I said, we're going to have fun. Yeah. And never really, and I knew too, just like in those moments of when things don't go your way, man, I knew my kids were going to be watching me too. They're going to watch how I responded. Dad got fired. Okay, that's not the end of the world, like Van said. Okay, everybody gets fired in this profession usually. That's part of it. But I wanted to make sure they knew, number one, hey, Dad's still Dad, and then how's he treating his mom? He's not letting that affect everything else in his life. And I was really cognizant of that, and trying to make sure that I focused on that part of it for them, to keep their world as, we knew we were going to move, we knew all those things, but I wanted to make sure I tried to keep their world as focused as I could on, hey, Dad's still around. And so did that, and it was just like that meeting with those players at Western. I remember talking to our pastor there before I went that Sunday night after the team meeting to tell him I was obviously, not going to be back. And I told him, I said, man, this is going to be the best meeting I've had with these guys in 5 years. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, man, I've been preaching all along how you respond if things don't go your way. Now, I said, I get to live that. I said, so in the 5 years they've heard me in a meeting, this is going to be the one they're going to pay attention to, because now they're going to see, is Coach TC just talking to be talking, or is he going to live out what he's been preaching to us? And so that was the big part of it. And then, so I'm sitting there reaching out, and here comes COVID. So now you've got a different element. Somebody asked me the other day, said, hey, any advice about, getting, when you get fired? I said, well, make sure you try not to get fired during a global pandemic or 1-6 at the start. That's usually not going to be good for business. I said, but can't control that, right? Absolutely. So that's just part of it. So here I was, I'd been out of work. Everybody's like, well, here's COVID. What are we going to do? We're at home. I said, man, enjoy it. I said, I've been home for 3 months now. I said, don't miss the moment. And so here comes COVID. I'm at home again, still trying to get jobs. We all know how that was going. I literally was involved in a couple other analyst jobs across the country, had spoken to some people, and then all of a sudden I get phone calls, and they're like, hey, with COVID, we're not going to fill these spots. Right. They just didn't know. Everybody was still in that day-to-day process. And so that's going on. I'm speaking at the Glacier Clinic in Nashville, and a buddy of mine, and I tie this into what we were talking about a minute ago, a buddy of mine, high school coach here in Atlanta, he says, hey, TC, he's like, I've got a buddy fixing to take a job in Atlanta. He said he needs an offensive coordinator. I gave him your name, told him you may be interested still. I know you want to stay in college, but if not, he's going to call you. And I'm thinking partly like, okay, we've all heard that. He's going to call me. Like, yeah okay. And sure enough, I get back to Atlanta. He calls me that Tuesday. We have a good conversation. And kind of goes from there. Those other doors started closing. This door just kind of kept staying open. And I was like, I kept telling my wife, I'm like, man, we need to listen to this. I was like, cause there's something there. I don't know what it is, may not understand it, but and so that all kind of just progresses. Those other jobs just kind of close the door on those. And then obviously COVID gets full force going, and we're just sitting there, and part of me, I didn't want to sit out was a big part of it.
Yeah.
I just felt like, I said, man, as a healthy guy that's 34 years old at the time, I said, that'd be pretty selfish of me to sit out at coaching, to wait on a college job or whatever. I said, man, I still want to impact people. And it may be a different level than maybe I wanted to, or felt like that, where I'd been, but I said, ball is ball. And I said, I try to use the opportunity as a growing experience to become a better, teacher and coach. I mean, I never taught school. I was teaching sixth grade geography now. So if anybody wants to start teaching sixth grade geography, we'll get your mind right. Because you're dealing with those key. What I told myself, I said, I'm going to use this to get better. Yeah. And I said, from even though it's just like a position meeting room, I said, I can become, because now you're going to ground zero.
Yeah.
Just like in high school, kind of probably leading into what at the high school level, it's different. I remember talking to a guy one time about how you want to tax, stem him and get leverage. And he's looking at me like, stem and leverage. He's like, what are you talking about? And so it was good for me because it made me just get it all back to the basics and really redevelop, so to speak, some of those, coaching points that you maybe sometimes take for granted, the higher level you go. And so now it's like, hey, this is going to help me down the road. And I kept telling myself, like, when I get a chance to go back to college, this will help me be even better coach because I've dealt with those things in that 14 to 18-year-old versus that 18 to 22-year-old. But it was just kind of it was a God thing because, and I tell you this, and my faith's important to me, but this job in Atlanta pops up. Okay. Don't know why. Well, we ended up buying a place. We're in Flowery Branch. We're like 3 minutes from the Falcons facility here in Atlanta. My in-laws live about 5 minutes from us where we bought our house. And I'm sitting there. We get this job. I'm like, why did this job open up? And so fast forward, we moved in about a year ago. We literally, like the end of June, closed on our house. About October, my mother-in-law gave back. So she had cancer about 5 years ago. And, she comes back to us. The cancer came back after about 4 years, which was not usual with the kind she had. So, but I knew then, okay, I was like, I see now maybe why we were here.
Yeah.
And so she'd seen both their grandsons, her daughter, and got to see her mom. And we know in this profession, I don't care what level, that's tough. Well, I fast forward that to December. On December 9th of this past year, everything's fine, goes in, has a pulmonary embolism, passes away. Oh, no. And at that moment, okay, and this is why I tell you this, at that moment, I knew why we took this job. And I was like, I remember driving to the hospital to meet my father-in-law. And I said, Lord, I know now why you did this. And sometimes we get caught seeing that versus the big picture on stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to get real religious on this, but for me, I just knew right there, like, sometimes you got to just have that faith and step out sometimes out of that comfort zone, maybe, because the good Lord was like, man, you're going to need to be there because something's bigger than football coming up. And he saw that and knew that. And so it was a really powerful moment for me personally to be like, I found my wife and my kids got to see their grandma the last 6 months of her life. Yeah. I was like, you can't put a price on that part of it. So,
amen. Well, that's awesome that you shared that because ultimately, like you said, you get, especially a business like this, man, you can get caught up in that rat race and, as I transition out and I'm sitting here, I'm like, man, I've missed so much stuff from my brother, my sister, mom, my dad, just, and sometimes you get that perspective and like you say, you have that, you do recognize that divine intervention of why you might have been led to a role that you're in. So I love that you pointed that out. Now, here recently you've had some more change, right? You just got offered and accepted a new job opportunity, co-offensive coordinator, quarterback coach at Wofford. Talk to us about a little bit of that process, specifically, number one, how it kind of showed up. A lot of times a lot of this podcast is high school coaches maybe want to get into the collegiate level or vice versa. And, sometimes finding that gig is tough. So just how the job showed itself and then a little bit about the interview process and how you approached it.
It's funny. I had opportunities in the spring at other places I'd talked to and visited with and just never, some of them didn't pan out and some of them just like I just didn't feel like it was the right fit, didn't want to move there and all that. I feel like I'm 14 years into this. I'm still young, but I'm kind of that point now in my career. I want to make sure I'm working for, good people. Do I want to move my family there? I mean, that's a big part of it too. I'm not just, I don't really get into logo chasing, if that makes sense. Yeah. But so going through the summer, we go to the beach. We're down at 30A. All right. Whole family. We're sitting there and get a text message from a buddy on staff says, "Hey man, we've got to change." He said, this may be an opportunity you may be interested in. He and I had visited. I knew a couple of guys on staff, and when I'd first gotten let go, I'd gone down there and spent a day with the staff, just chopping it up, trying to just do my networking thing. And sure enough, I get a phone call later that week from the head coach and says, "Hey, if you're interested in this opportunity, I'd love to visit with you." And I said, "Sure." And we sit there and have a conversation for about an hour and a half one day, and then got on a Zoom call. As we all gotten familiar with the Zoom world the last year and a half. And so it was funny. I sitting there on the Zoom call on a Friday morning, like 7:30, because I'm in Central Time and they're in Eastern Time. And so I'm up early, and all the coaches, and I said, "Guys, this is not a filter behind me." I said, "That's really the way. That's really the waves crashing." So I said, "Don't feel bad." And but it was good, and we had a good conversation, and it kind of progressed from there. And then went to campus that next week, and then got offered the opportunity in the middle of last week, and it was fast and furious. But I guess we were talking a little earlier off air. I walked into that interview, and the whole time I just kind of said, "Hey, do I want to be here?" I was like, man, sometimes I think we go into interviews and we're like, okay, I got to make sure they like me, or all this, and you try to oversell yourself. And for me, it was more of, hey, do I want to be here? Do I want to come to work with these guys? And I was trying to interview them myself to make sure it was a good fit for me, my family, and all those things. We lived in the upstate of South Carolina for 5 years, and I was at Clemson.
Yeah.
So we were very familiar with that area. I mean, you're 40 minutes away from where we lived. So going back over there for us, my wife and I got married there. Our oldest was born there. So there's some emotional family ties to that area for us. If you ask us family where our home is, where our family started, we're going to tell you the upstate of South Carolina, because that's where we started our family. But it was a fast moving process, but because I didn't know Coach Conklin very well. We'd competed against each other, but it really came down to me knowing some guys on staff.
Yeah.
And those guys helping me in the process, and then just getting in there. And he and I felt really comfortable with him too throughout the process. I'm excited to go to work for him. He's a young guy too. It's dynamic, and he's got a great vision for that program, and I'm excited to be a small part of it.
Coach, that's awesome, man. There's two things that really stood out to me there is really how you planted that seed at Wofford, right? And probably at the point in time, and not really looking for that instant gratification. You said you visited the staff, you hung out with them for a couple of days, and this was at this point in time, I'm imagining a year and a half ago. And I walked away. Maybe you were hoping to get a call back for an opportunity, but at the same time, it didn't happen. And so I just think, like you said, we get so nearsighted in coaching, especially when we get caught off guard and we're looking for a new opportunity. We're just searching and searching and searching, in that very moment for the first opportunity where, that took a year and a half of a relationship for people to be like, hey, you guys remember that awesome coach that drove down here and we spent the day with, and he knew his stuff and he was good on the board and he asked great questions. Let's hire him. You know what I mean? And that's just a great testament to really, just being genuine in some of the interactions that you have with coaches, not necessarily always looking for that job opportunity, only calling them when that situation arises.
And that was a lot of too how I got to Western Carolina. Brad Glenn, who was offensive coordinator at Georgia State now, when I first got to Clemson, I had a buddy on the staff at App State when they were all there, and he said, "Hey," he said, "these guys want to come down and talk with you guys." And I said, "Sure, come on." And so as a young guy, I always try to say, man, and I try to tell us the young GAs, and anytime a staff would come visit us, I would always try to make sure, like, hey, I want to be in charge of those guys when they come.
Yeah.
Because I said, man, this is a great opportunity to get around guys. And I say that because so here comes Brad Glenn and some guys from App State. Well, that's 2011. And then 4 years later, they've got a spot at Western. Brad calls me and says, "Hey, we got a receiver's job." I'm an analyst at the time, just trying now to get my own opportunity, get my room, recruit, and do those things. And so that opportunity, 4 years in the making. That's from a day I spent 6 hours in a room talking ball.
Right.
I mean, it's those things I think sometimes that you just have to make sure, like, you got to invest in yourself, number one. But it's like, man, take those don't miss those opportunities when they're there, because anybody that walks in that building, we all know in this profession, we're all one job away from being in a seat where you can hire people.
Yeah.
And you're always constantly evaluating. I know I am. I'm like, I'll meet a guy on the road recruiting, or I'll meet a coach, and I'm like, man, I like that guy. He's got something about him. We'll make sure if I'm ever in a situation like somebody calls me looking for somebody, I'm gonna say, hey, there's a guy I know. I don't care what level.
Yeah.
And be able to say, hey, here's a guy that you may want to talk to, or even if I get in a situation, to hire somebody one day, it's like, okay, I've got a list of people that's really deep that I've built over 14 years of just meeting people, working with people. And I think it's pivotal if you want to move.
Absolutely, Coach. Thanks for pointing that out. And then another thing that you said, I think was worth spending a little time on is, you find yourself in this position, and you wanted to coach college. You wanted to be a college coach, and you go through that divine intervention, whatever you want to call it, you end up where you are. And once again, this college opportunity pops back up, man. It's an FCS program, traditionally pretty good program. And, most people would be like, oh, this is what you wanted. Go take the gig. And you said something very interesting, is that you sat on that call and you interviewed them as well. And I think that is one of the most slept on things in this profession. And, I was kind of telling you, we were talking a little bit before air, I was speaking at NCAA, NFL, Coaches Academy. They put it on in Tampa, Florida every year. And I was a part of the class a few years, and I got an AFCA. And so they thought it was a good opportunity for me to speak. And I'm so thankful that they did, because one of the questions that went around was, it was really geared about chasing that job. You want to put your best foot forward. Make sure your resume is on point. Make sure you got drill tape. Make sure you dress for the job. all the stuff that we grown here. And then we were going down the panel, and it finally got to me. And I said, you interview them. Don't feel like because they have a job that's on the table that you got to walk in there and take it, because you should be so gracious. Like, go in there and make sure it's a head coach that you want to work for. Make sure it's a vision that you believe in. Make sure you're comfortable with the offensive defensive philosophy that is now going to be kind of stamped on your resume. From that point in time, and I kind of went down that deal, and it was kind of crickets a little bit, and I don't know if it resonated with anybody, but that's something that throughout my career, I look back and say, and I remember being on some staffs where I just absolutely loved being at work and looking around and chuckling in between meetings. You spend all day with these guys. And I remember working on some staffs where it's like, God, I can't wait for the staff meeting to be over with. The tension is so high because these two guys don't like each other. They don't gel well. What are we doing on offense? And you're just sitting there and you're just frustrated for, and that's a part of business, man. And I just love that you mentioned that, because that is important.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, that was a big part for me. I had a good job. I mean, it's easy, the outside world say, well, you're coaching high school football, you want to get back in college, it's a no-brainer.
Right.
But for me, I told my wife when we took this opportunity, I said, look, listen, I want to get back in college. That's my goal. That's what I've always been working for. I said, and I enjoy the recruiting. I love the recruiting part of it and getting to develop people. But I said, what I'm not going to do is just jump at some opportunity that's not a good one. I said, I'm in the state of Georgia. I've recruited for a long time. There's really good high school football. There's excellent football coaches in the state. And I'm proud to be able to say I'm a Georgia high school football coach. And I say that very proudly. And so for me, it was going to be something that had to be right on all those things. And so going through that process, it was, hey, what's this interaction like? And do I feel comfortable in these guys? And I mean, heck, I think I'm like the third oldest coach on that staff there. And I'm 35, and I'm like, man, I didn't realize I was that old. But the thing that's nice about that is I was like, I feel like I'm in my 20s, I guess, if that's worth anything. But I was like, man, you want to be around those guys that are young and they're getting after it. And obviously that program is phenomenal. And in my opinion, it was funny. My wife, we're sitting there, and I had this look on my face, and she's like, something's up. She's like, I know how you get when somebody calls about a job or something. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because usually, like any good coach, if you told your wife everything that goes on, she's going to live in constant fear of moving and doing all that. So I usually never tell her about things until it's progressed to seriousness, whether it's an interview or those types of things. And so she comes over, and I'm sitting in a chair, and she's like, well, who called you? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm trying to play it off. I'm not good at that kind of stuff. So I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. She's like, somebody called you. And so I mentioned, I said, it's Wofford. And she was like, yeah, that's a good opportunity there. And so she kind of knew, and she's an excellent coach's wife. She gets it, because we do this together.
Yeah.
And so that was the thing. It just, the whole time, all those questions got answered. And as I talked to people that had either worked for Coach or worked with him, it was nothing but great things. And then having when I say I know 3 guys on that staff really, really well. And so I was able to, have them to, to fall back on and say, hey, what's it like in the day-to-day part of it? The drive for me to work every day is the same, whether I'm coaching at Hebron Christian Academy in Atlanta, the Dallas Cowboys in Frisco, Texas, or, Clemson Tigers in Clemson, South Carolina. As coaches, our drive to work's the same, but it's, will my family be happy?
Yeah.
All those things. They're the ones that got to interact in the community more so. We have a natural built-in group of people that we get around when we get in that building.
Yeah.
And so it's them. Like I said, we lived there before for 5 years. And so there was a lot of comfort in this situation for us too.
That's awesome, Coach. Well, this has been great, man. I love just, talking about the real side of the profession, and just a great coach like yourself, just going through it and like been indoctrinated into this profession, like Coach said at that point in time. And one last thing I wanted to ask you about before we hop off is you had the opportunity to be a member of the 2018 AFCA 35 under 35 class, which continues to grow to be an more elite class, but program every single year, just because of coaches like yourself that come and represent well and continue to have a great career trajectory. Can you share a little bit about what that experience was like, been a part of that? We're obviously in the middle of the application process right now, so I'm just trying to sell people on why they should be applying, and how it helped you develop as a coach, and then what it means to be a part of that group.
Well, first of all, I think it's one of the best things out there right now. And I say that all seriousness too, because in this profession, it's a people business. Okay. Obviously there's the production side of it that we all know, but it's about the people. It's about, helping others, and being also too, you building your network of people around you and in your circle. I give you an example. There's probably 4 or 5 guys from that year's class that I did not know going into that. And they're some of my closest friends now. And so now that circle is expanded, right? And so, I got let go. There's some of the first people that reached out to me. Got this opportunity here. There's some of the first people that reached out to me. And so what it allowed me to do was get around another group of people that I would not have gotten to know probably unless we'd worked together or, just met through happenstance. And so the chance to be a part of that group from that perspective of it was awesome. And it's funny because I've had about 3 or 4 guys that have texted me over the last couple, week, I think, and said, hey, what do I do to get on that, 35 under 35? And, as they say, hey, is it worth it and all that? And I'm like, man, listen, if I were you, I said, I'd go 100 miles an hour. I said, because that thing, you talk about when, I guess it was in 18. I remember there was David Cutcliffe, James Franklin, Pat Narduzzi came and spoke to us. And just planting those seeds in you, if their experiences, and also too, that ability to make contact with those guys and be able to get around. I think, we had some ADs in there, I believe too. I can't remember exactly, but just the whole process of, how you can grow in this profession, the importance of the networking element of it, because, you can know a lot of people, but do you know the people that are in a position to hire, number one? And then are they going to be somebody that's going to stand on the table to vouch for you when there's an opportunity on staff? Because we all know a head coach is probably not going to hire somebody that he doesn't know or worked with before. But if you got somebody on that staff that knows that guy and stands on the table, your chances are going to go up tremendously. I'm speaking from experience of that right now where I'm going at Wofford. I didn't know Coach Conklin that well. It made him on the road recruiting, but there was 3 guys on that staff that were standing on a table for me. And so, that allowed that door to open. And so, that's a huge part of it. And I would wholeheartedly endorse, that function, that leadership institute, because it's allowed my career to continue to grow exponentially, even more so than I felt like on my own, that I'd done. And then getting the chance every year. One of the coolest things we do, I think you guys have done, is every year we have that alumni event. Yeah. And so we get to it's like a fraternity, right? You come back and I've had a lot of buddies that have gone and done it and then met other, it's it's really, really cool. And it's probably one of the, I've talked about before, people, probably one of the highest honors in coaching I've had has been to be a part of that group. And I think it's really special.
Well, we appreciate you making it special, Coach. That those programs aren't successful without the people in them. And so we once again, we appreciate you applying and being a great representative of what it's all about, and especially as these guys reach out to you, being a great ambassador and selling on what the purpose of it is, and making sure that our goal is being met from the AFCA standpoint. But before I let you go, man, I wanted to give you the opportunity to just share your Twitter account, so coaches, especially as you begin this new journey, they can keep up with your journey at Wofford and ask questions if they got any, and seek advice if they have any.
So my Twitter is just at Coach Carlton, Carlton. Pretty simple. If you search that, you'll find it on there. And if you're on Instagram and all that, Coach Tyler Carlton. So I know some of the younger guys in that IG world. So.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You gotta adapt, man. That's crazy. Well, Coach, I sure appreciate the time, man. It was fun, and best of luck to you this season. Hopefully everything goes smoothly with the from a COVID standpoint. We're able to get all of our games in, and look forward to seeing you down in San Antonio in 2022.
Yes, sir, Coach. I appreciate you guys, and it's awesome what you guys do, and I really appreciate everything you do for us coaches. Appreciate it.
No doubt. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset. If you heard anything on this episode that you would like to learn more information about, head over to afcapodcast.com, where you can find every episode and all of the corresponding show notes. While you're there, take a second to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for the show, please let us know by sending an email to podcast@afca.com. Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Inside the Headset and tag it when you share each episode. You can stay up to date with all things AFCA by following the @WeAreAFCA Twitter account. Every episode of Inside the Headset can also be found on your favorite audio streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you are not currently a member of the AFCA, be sure to find us online at afca.com and apply to join over 10,000 NFL, college, and high school coaches from around the country who are striving to be the best they can be. With an AFCA membership, you gain invaluable access to the annual AFCA convention, the bi-monthly magazine, and the new and improved digital library, which contains thousands of videos and articles contributed by hundreds of current and former football coaches. You can also visit afcainsider.com to sign up for our free weekly email newsletter on the right-hand side of the screen. It comes out every Tuesday at lunch and is filled with great articles and stories written by many of the same coaches you hear on the podcast. It's geared to help you become a better coach tomorrow than you are today. Be sure to connect with me on Twitter at Coach Mario Price, and remember, the AFCA is not just an annual convention. It is an association that continually promotes education, guidance, and networking. But it is also so much more than that. The AFCA is about celebrating the past and educating the future. It is about developing great coaches who will produce great teams and even better people. So invest in your skill set and impact today by engaging with the AFCA.